a vibrant and dynamic delegation of Iranian-American youth joining us today. This group of inspiring individuals represents the future, bringing energy, innovation, and a fresh perspective to our gathering. Their diverse experiences, talents, and aspirations contribute immensely to the rich tapestry of Iranian-American community. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from these young leaders as they share their unique insights and visions. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our distinguished delegation of Iranian-American youth. Mr. Sina Saidian, a recent graduate from UC Berkeley. Ms. Mariam Hosseini from San Diego, California. Ms. Michelle Shariat from Atlanta, Georgia. And Mr. Parsa Arya, a sociology major at Texas A&M.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a child of a political prisoner from Iran, I carry a narrative, not just of suffering and loss, but also of hope and relentless pursuit of freedom. My story begins not just with myself, but with my father, a man whose resilience in the face of adversity has been a guiding light in my life. My father faced severe repression in Iran, targeted for his unwavering support for the main opposition group, the MEK. His voice, which echoed the aspirations of many for peace and democracy, was confronted by the regime's repression. My father managed to survive as a political prisoner, leave Iran, and take refuge in the United States. He is now among the leaders of Iranian-Americans fighting for a non-nuclear, secular Republic Iran. He is here today, carrying with him the messages and memories of his fellow cellmates. I have come to know the resistance through my father. Today, I want to talk specifically about a brave political prisoner, Mariam Akbar Monfarid. Her story symbolizes the struggle and sacrifice of thousands who are still languishing in prisons across Iran. I stand before you in support of Mariam and her daughters. Today, I stand before you as the voice of daughters of political prisoners, embodying the pain, the resilience, and the undying hope that defines our existence. It is a shared pain that I feel deeply, understanding the agony of those like Mariam's children. The price for freedom in Iran is indeed high, a testament to the nation's ongoing battle against religious tyranny, a tyranny that has weaponized religion against its own people, fostering terror and chaos, not just within its borders, but across the Middle East. Yet, amidst this darkness, there exists a shining hope, a story of resistance that continues to unfold each day in Iran. The resistance is not limited to the men and women on the front lines, but resonates in the hearts of boys and girls, sons and daughters, who, despite the shadows of dictatorship, dream of democracy. It is a movement rooted in the rich history of Iran, one that fought against the tyranny of the Shah and continues to fight until Iran is free. I am proud of my father. I am proud of Iran's freedom fighters, and proud in championing their right to self-determination, self-defense, dignity, and freedom. Thank you.
Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the one from Texas. It's a pleasure to be speaking here before you, and as we've heard from previous speakers, we're here in support of a free and non-nuclear and secular Iranian Republic. This brings me to our republic here in America. Being an American, it's not simply a birthright, but a commitment to a set of values. I was born after the 1979 revolution in Houston, Texas. My father emigrated from Iran and my mother from Mexico. And it's because of this that I've learned that being an American... Sorry, excuse me. Is that better? All right. My mother and father. My father emigrated from Iran, my mother from Mexico. And it's because of this I've learned that being an American, it's not simply a birthright, but a set of values that we commit to uphold. One of which is the defense of human rights. In 2023, the world witnessed a troubling 43% increase in executions by the regime in Tehran. The mullah's regime holds the highest number of execution of athletes, artists, and young people in the world. So where does that exactly leave us as Americans? As Dr. Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And we've heard these words echoed at our rallies before. However, we cannot simply stand by these atrocities, witnessing such violence in Iran committed by a regime that is working to terrorize its own people, terrorizing the Middle East and endangering all of us. It is our duty as Americans to stand in solidarity with the people of Iran and to foster those same values that we cherish so much. The values that stand on the history of the resistance that took place in Valley Forge, marking a major turning point in the American Revolutionary War. When I speak of Valley Forge, I'm reminded of Ashraf III in Albania. I'm speaking of the resistance units in Iran who, like the founding fathers and freedom fighters of our country, selflessly devote themselves to the well-being of their nation in hope of a brighter future. They fight against tyranny, repression, religious persecution, and political violence to establish a democratic republic. Beyond political support, the Iranian people of Ashraf III and the MEK resistance units seek global and moral support, recognition, and amplification on the global stage. They're not asking us to fight their battle. They deserve our acknowledgement of their right to self-defense against the criminal IRGC and the tyrannical regime of the mullahs. We must ensure their struggle and their voices are heard in every corner of the world. And we must ensure America stands with them. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and Iranian-American leaders, today I stand before you not just as a student activist, but as an advocate for human rights and democratic values, particularly concerning the situation in Iran. Our support for the call for regime change in Iran is not just an expression of political opinion, but a manifestation of our commitment to fundamental human rights, justice, and the global fight against tyranny. I was born after the 1979 revolution. Reflecting on Iran's history, however, it is evident that the widespread public dissatisfaction can lead to a substantial change, as we saw in the 1979 revolution. This historical context amplifies Tehran's fear of mass protests, knowing well that their power hangs by a thread of public consent. Nationwide protests signify a profound demand for regime change, a clear rejection not just of specific policies, but of the regime in its entirety. This is the existential threat that has compelled Ebrahim Raisi, Khamenei, and the IRGC to resort to draconian methods in a desperate attempt to maintain control. Yet the resilience of the Iranian people shines through the resistance units, many of whom are my age and are young women in Iran. It shines through the mobilization of resistance units across Iran, which represents a significant evolution in the protest movements. These units have been pivotal in organizing and leading protests, ensuring the integrity and uniformity of the protest messages nationwide. Despite internet blackouts and surveillance, their coordination and dissemination of information have kept the flame of resistance alive, transforming isolated incidents of dissident into powerful nationwide movements calling for a regime change for the people and by the people of Iran. Our solidarity across universities in the United States is much needed for the Iranian people and the MEK resistance units. As students and activists in the United States, we have a unique platform and responsibility to amplify the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. Our support can make a difference, encouraging further international recognition and political support for their cause. Let us stand together, united in our support for the Iranian resistance units, the people's fight for freedom and democracy. Let our voices be heard, and let us ensure that the flame of resistance in Iran is fueled by our unwavering support for their rightful quest for a better future. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends and distinguished guests. As an Iranian-American, I am often asked what the best path forward towards democracy in Iran is. Let me first start by addressing the path that we cannot take. For over 40 years, Western politicians mistakenly believed in a false notion that there was a moderate faction inside the Iranian regime. And blinded by the futile game of negotiations and nuclear deals, pro-appeasement administrations failed to support nationwide uprisings from 1999 to 2009 to 2017. But after the latest uprisings in 2022, the world finally recognized that the concept of reforming a murderous regime such as the Ayatollahs is and always was a myth. However, a new and equally sinister faction, led by the son of a deposed Shah, has emerged from the failed reform movement to co-opt the Iranian people's democratic aspirations. Many of us knew from day one that the son of the Shah and his posse of former Savak torturers, ex-reformists, and regime puppets represent nothing more than another feeble attempt to distract the international community and blow out the flames of regime change in Iran. Yet, make no mistake, young Iranians responded to this charade loudly with chants of "down with the oppressor, be it the Shah or the supreme leader." Now, with that said, I'm not here to relitigate the past or lament the efforts of the regime and its cronies to undermine our resistance. Instead, I'd like to shine a light on the inspiring vision of freedom and progress that young Iranians represent. In order for regime change to be successful, there must be a capable alternative to lead it. And year after year, new generations of young Iranian protesters are continuing the tradition of democratic resistance that was started over 40 years ago by the MEK and the NCRI. The brave young students in the streets today are focused, they are resilient, and they will not back down until the entirety of the regime is dismantled. Millions of Iranians inside and outside the country are inspired by the MEK because of its half-century of resistance against not one, but two separate dictators that have been determined to exterminate them to no avail. Indeed, as Secretary Pompeo remarked earlier, while some were focused on reforming the regime, the NCRI declared as early as 1979 that its mission was to overthrow the regime and establish a democratic republic. This consistency must not be taken for granted. Because of its track record and because of its commitment to its principles, the MEK has been subject to the most barbaric persecution imaginable. Yet it has remained steadfast in its commitment to its principles to fight against dictatorship and four basic principles. You see, neither the Shah's imprisonment and execution of student activists in the 70s, nor Khomeini's 1988 massacre of 30,000 political prisoners managed to weaken the MEK's resolve. As General Jones remarked, every single one of these victims has a son, they have a brother, they have a mother, a cousin, a spouse that is ready to fight and continue that battle for democracy and freedom today. Indeed, the protesters in the streets today are the descendants of this tradition of democracy and fighting for freedom, and that is why individuals can be killed, but the spirit of freedom can never be killed. Now, the key to the Iranian resistance to survival lies in its passion for freedom, which binds together across multiple generations in a common struggle. It is that passion and the knowledge of an established resistance that inspires Iranians as young as 18 years old to pour out into the streets, to risk their lives, to say no to this regime. Today's freedom fighters are inspired to fight because they know they are continuing a decades-long movement that is led by a capable resistance organization that has never taken a single day off. The MEK continues to resonate because its advocacy is not defined by its religion or its ethnicity, a social class, or even a political belief. Instead, its advocacy is defined by basic principles like democratic governance, like gender equality, economic freedom, and the separation of church and state. These are universal values that bind Iranians together across generations and across social backgrounds. In contrast to the barbaric regime of the Shah and of the mullahs, the MEK offers a forward-looking, inspiring vision that is based on secularism and democracy and which respects human rights and, most importantly, empowers its youth because it knows that those are the people who are going to determine the future of the country. Now, of course, the future of Iran will be determined by the people of Iran, but we must not forget that the MEK and the NCRI have played a very crucial part, whether directly or indirectly, in laying an intellectual foundation for regime change that is now being echoed in the streets of Iran every single day. Now, I personally was born after the revolution in 1979, and I've never been allowed to visit Iran because of my outspoken opposition to this regime. But I've had the privilege to get to know the young leaders of the Iranian opposition, and I have deep admiration for their commitment to securing freedom and democracy for their brothers and sisters in Iran. Let us not forget the sacrifices that young Iranians have made and are continuing to make to bring about a brighter future. To the youth in Iran, I say thank you for inspiring us with your resistance. We stand with your righteous fight to overthrow the mullahs and to establish a secular, a democratic, and a non-nuclear republic in Iran.